Let's start with the first session. And the first presentation of this session will be presented by Marta Dunbar from CTAQUA, project coordinator. She is going to provide an overview of objectives and actions, general overview of the actions in the Integrate project.
Okay, so as previously mentioned in the program overview, I will give you a brief presentation of why we developed the Integrate project and how, before we launch into the more technical part of the presentations. So why was the Integrate project conceived? In general, the idea stems from the need to advance and strengthen IMTA implementation as a valuable tool to support sustainable aquaculture in the Atlantic area. And since aquaculture is a growing industry in the bioeconomy, there's a need for sustainable approaches to the diversification of the sector. And although IMTA in the Atlantic area is encouraged by major policies in the EU, there are still many hurdles and challenges that need to be overcome, including socioeconomic, administrative, and regulatory that are hindering the implementation of IMTA on an industrial scale. And in previous projects, as well as during Integrate itself, we've seen that an industry-relevant definition and appropriate standards would help support the industry and regulatory bodies to anchor this approach in the Atlantic area aquaculture sector. So in 2016, we saw the opportunity to propose a project that would meet the needs I mentioned in the previous slide. The Interreg Atlantic Area Program is a European funding program that promotes transnational cooperation among 36 Atlantic regions in 5 European countries. And via the European Regional Development Fund, the program co-finances cooperation projects in the field of innovation and competitiveness, resource efficiency, territorial risk management, biodiversity, and natural and cultural assets. So the Integrate project was accepted in the first call of this program in 2016 and effectively started in 2017. Integrate is included in the priority area 2.2, which is fostering resource efficiency, green growth, eco-innovation, and environmental efficiency, since the main aim of IMTA is a circular economy approach to reusing resources. The project was conceived by a group of researchers and production experts from the European Atlantic Centers of Excellence with proven experience in IMTA development from Spain, Portugal, France, Ireland, and the UK. And it was clear from the start that there was a need to take a technological step forward within the aquaculture sector to guide the industrial transition towards IMTA production. So as a partnership, we've been able to further advance knowledge and important steps taken in previous projects toward this goal. Here are a couple photos of most of us at partnership meetings in different parts of the European Atlantic and in different seasons, as you can see. The first meeting took place in Andalusia, Spain, here at CTAQUA in 2017, and our last physical meeting took place last autumn in Brittany, France, hosted by CEVA. So in addition to the 8 project partner institutions, we have also been accompanied by 11 associated partner institutions from private and public organizations in the 5 partner countries. These organizations range from local industry to national governmental, all providing their respective expertise within varying degrees of involvement. So in terms of implementation, the project is divided into 6 work packages. Work packages 4 to 6 are focused on the more scientific activities, like the pilot actions and environmental modeling, and they're accompanied by the first 3 supportive and transversal work packages with the aim of capitalizing the knowledge generated and successfully communicating the results to the industry, academia, public administration, and society at large. We identified 4 main objectives for the implementation of the project, with the final goal of successfully implementing IMTA in the European Atlantic area. So to strengthen collaborative networking around eco-efficient aquaculture techniques, to communicate the principles and benefits of IMTA and raise awareness of its holistic approach, to achieve market consolidation of EU sustainable seafood, and to fulfill Atlantic area and European Union regional goals as the industry transitions to resource-efficient technologies, so the promotion of green and blue growth in aquaculture. In order to fulfill Objective 1, to strengthen collaborative networking around eco-efficient aquaculture techniques, we developed and implemented a series of measures so that aquaculture industry professionals and future professionals could experience firsthand how to develop IMTA activities in their own facilities. So for example, through technical visits to the pilot action sites, we were able to show the challenges and limitations to IMTA implementation, as well as some of the solutions to overcome these. In order to fulfill Objective 2, to communicate the principles and benefits of IMTA and raise awareness of IMTA's holistic approach, we developed a wide range of communication material and multimedia to communicate the scientific complexity of the project to a wide range of stakeholders, not only to the industry, but also policymakers and the general public. All of these materials and multimedia are freely available on the project's website and the YouTube channel. This way, all interested stakeholders can view at one glance and download the material of interest to them, depending on their knowledge and starting point. So the project website acts as a kind of repository for all the final material produced during the project, and it will also be maintained for several years after the project ends, so it will form a central part of the project's legacy. In addition, via social media like Twitter, we can target a broad range of stakeholders, including the scientific community and other international projects, as well as international administrative bodies. So not only can we disseminate our own news, we can also follow what others are developing and keep up to date with relevant developments in IMTA and beyond. Two major challenges faced by aquaculture in the Atlantic area are to provide a sustainable seafood supply that reduces EU dependency on wild stocks, catering to the market demand at local and transnational level, and to become a competitive supplier within the EU seafood market. So in terms of Objective 3, to achieve market consolidation of EU sustainable seafood, for example, each partner country organized a series of expert roundtables focused on one specific aspect of IMTA implementation each, so including technical, economic, environmental, social, and regulatory, in order to discuss the main challenges from each of these points of views. Gathering key players from the respective sectors, including industry, academia, environmental organizations, and public administration, we were able to identify the advantages and disadvantages of IMTA implementation in each of these categories in each country, as well as the necessary steps to be taken in order to support industrial transition toward its implementation. So since the current state of development of IMTA is different between the countries, sharing this knowledge among the partners has helped to consolidate the approach and to accompany the practical experience of the pilot actions, as well as to reduce some of the complexity of these systems. A mathematical conceptual model was developed, replicating the productive compartments of the system in order to predict responses. And the resulting data were subsequently assessed in order to predict the environmental performance of IMTA through a life cycle assessment. But my colleagues will describe these activities in more detail later on. In terms of fulfilling Atlantic area and EU regional goals, the project was conceived from strategic needs of regional policies with the aim of bridging the gap between research, industry, and society, and to facilitate the implementation of greener aquaculture systems in general according to circular economy principles. So for example, the Europe 2020 strategy established priorities towards a smart, sustainable, inclusive economic growth. And in the Integrate project, our objectives support resource efficiency with the aim of fostering green growth opportunities within the aquaculture sector, which would ultimately be achieved through the wide-scale adoption of IMTA in the Atlantic area. So while tangible outputs have been generated during the project, long-term effects will be achieved, for example, through the training courses and best practice guides that are freely available on our website, as previously mentioned. And through our activities and outputs, such as the pilot actions and strategic plans, we can bring the industry closer to the advantages of IMTA implementation and enable the sector to gain a competitive position in new markets with increased quality and diversification of products. So taken together, the implemented activities helped us to develop and understand different models of IMTA implementation and understand their challenges and limitations and solutions to overcome these. So as well as the socioeconomic, regulatory, and administrative hurdles in each country, focusing on the commonalities rather than the differences. And now I'll leave you with my colleagues Bertrand and Jessica to start off the more scientific part of our webinar with a talk about how IMTA is perceived in the Atlantic area and beyond. Thank you very much.
So the next talk is going to be presented by Bertrand, Jacquemin and Jessica Radcliffe from CEVA in France and National University of Galway in Ireland. Bertrand is the first to start. So Bertrand, I'm going to give you the screen.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. So the first of the integrated adventure was to make a state of the art about the current practices of IMTA in this area. This work is actually under review process for publication in the journal Aquaculture. To do this, we explore the scientific and grey literature with the starting assumption that all the cultivated aquatic organisms can be used within IMTA systems and without any expectation or a priori about the content of the references. Two levels analysis was then applied to our database. First, a quantitative approach where the number of references within several topics was compared between Atlantic area countries. And second, a qualitative analysis to highlight the redundant and discrete data, allowing us to reveal practices either shared or specific to the 5 Atlantic area countries. From the 88 references we collected, the first result is the rising interest since 1996 of the 5 Atlantic area countries about IMTA. As the concept of IMTA is based on practices historically described in the antiquity, previous studies before 1996 have probably concerned the combination of aquaculture practices, but without combining the vocabulary commonly used now for IMTA. A dominance of marine IMTA systems is observed in Atlantic area countries, probably due to higher number and diversity of cultivated species for a larger market for sea products than for fresh water. A first differentiation between the Atlantic area countries comes from the location of the systems. Land-based in France, Portugal, and Spain, at-sea systems for Ireland and UK. To explain this, different environmental constraints, which allow the access to at-sea production area, a higher level of control for parameters in land-based systems, and technical difficulties to monitor the connections between compartments in at-sea farm. These technical issues are also illustrated by the higher number of technical studies rather than environmental, economics, or social topics. This result is shared by the 5 Atlantic area countries and can be summarized as, before evaluating why should we develop IMTA, we have to know how to do IMTA. When we looked at the kind of organisms that have been combined in the different IMTA systems, we can see that even if the 5 Atlantic area countries started from different starting points, they all explore the 3 trophic levels, from extraction of organic particulate matter to organic dissolved matter and mineral compounds. Some complex systems have been studied, like in France, where 7 different organisms from 7 different trophic behaviors were combined. To conclude, this review highlighted a common strategy within the Atlantic area. The concept of IMTA is primarily based on theoretical, environmental, and economic arguments, hence a predominance of technical studies to define the possibilities of implementation of IMTA systems. Then, studies will test the economic and environmental reality of the concept. as Atlantic area countries show a common interest with complementary skills, an efficient international collaboration is possible, but a consensus is needed about what is behind the acronym of IMTA. So thank you for your attention and happy to discuss with you in more details later.
Okay, thank you, Bertrand. We're now switching to Jessica Radcliffe. So Jessica, I've given you the screen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Ratcliffe, and I'll continue from Bertrand and briefly take you through the integrate approach to defining IMTA. As I was saying, I am going to take you through the integrate approach to defining IMTA. And the infographic on the left has been published as part of an article in the European Aquaculture Society magazine, and is a summary of the work that has been done, and which I will overview now. So this work took place in 3 parts. First were a series of roundtables in each AA country. Second was a questionnaire for IMTA experts. And third was a definition event that took place in May of last year. So in the first instance, we undertook a series of national roundtables, 4 or 5 in each country, for a total of 21, and with over 350 participants in total from academia, industry, and state institutions. These roundtables involve discussion of the bottlenecks to and priority areas for IMTA development nationally, and you can see the topics there. So we held different roundtables for each of those topics. So these have been really fruitful discussions, and their analysis has allowed commonalities and divergences between the AA countries to emerge. And one very clear commonality was the frequently articulated desire or perceived need for a European definition of IMTA. And this led us to increase the scope of the project to include further investigation of what this definition might be. And as a starting point, we designed a questionnaire to be sent to those working within IMTA or knowledgeable of IMTA in order to understand in clear terms how IMTA is conceived. So as with the round tables, the questionnaire covered technical, social, regulatory, environmental, and economic areas. We had contributions from 52 respondents from 17 countries. And the first thing to point out is that there was actually really quite a lot of consensus. That said, the questionnaire was deliberately simplistic and binary and had a lot of yes-no questions in, but alongside which we made requests for comment, which we hoped would allow greater diversity of opinion and nuance to be included. So from this analysis, we became aware of, firstly, areas in which consensus was totally lacking, and secondly, areas where consensus existed, but discussion was needed in order to tease out detail and specifics. And it allowed us to formulate questions which would be used to facilitate discussion sessions at an IMTA definition event. So the questionnaire, I'm not going to go into much of the detail now, but the questionnaire highlighted many issues, and I just selected a few on this slide to give some examples. So there was consensus about the need for a definition, that IMTA systems must have a minimum of 2 species, that there is no reason to exclude terrestrial organisms, and that IMTA systems may be owned and or managed by more than one person or group. On the other side, opinions were more diverse regarding whether socioeconomic factors should be implicitly included within IMTA systems, and what, if any, minimum threshold there should be for nutrient transfer between organisms in IMTA systems. So as I said, that's just some of the examples. There's many more in the full document. But clearly we had an awful lot to discuss. So when the event came, that was in May of last year in Porto, we had 40 experts and stakeholders in IMTA brought together. And following a series of introductory presentations, we held discussion groups, 2 working groups, one for open water systems and one for land-based systems, with the aim of finding majority consensus to some of the questions that from the last slide and teasing out the components of a definition. This was a single-day event, and while it was ambitious, it was also very productive. And following this event, we made a synopsis of the discussions, and we came up with a draft definition, which has then been sent back to all the participants in order that they could give their feedback. So again, although it's not possible to discuss the details now, this slide shows some examples of the contentious issues and their resolution. And it also shows the bones of the definition, both what we thought should be included and what was thought shouldn't be included. So in brief, the definition should be global, meaning applicable to all IMTA systems, and simple, but accompanied by a technical standard so that nuance and diversity of systems can be included. The definition needs to include reference to the principally aquatic nature of IMTA, the need for demonstrated nutrient flows between 2 or more managed functional groups, and that all species must be harvested. However, it should not specify either the degree of trophic connectivity or social or economic performance markers. So, the definition we finally arrived at was the following. IMTA equals enhanced production of aquatic organisms with or without terrestrial organisms of 2 or more functional groups that are trophically connected by demonstrated nutrient flows and whose biomass is fully or partially removed by harvesting. So while I've flown over much that is of interest that has come out of this process, you can find out all the details on the Integrate website. And there's also a summary article of this process in the EAS magazine from March of this year. Before I'd finish, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all the many participants along the way of the roundtables and the questionnaire and the event itself. It's been quite a lot of work, but very satisfying work, and I hope it will prove to be useful.
Okay, Jessica, thank you very much.